we focus on helping you claim what's rightfully yours, your health and your freedom. We explore the three main areas of health: the physical realm, the biochemical realm, and the mental and emotional realm. We also explore all the areas of lifestyle we can find that will help you live more abundantly, regardless of where you're starting. And remember, in life, you'll either make excuses or create results. You choose. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Hant, and I'm glad to be with you here today. Make sure to head on down to the show notes and click on the link to join our tribe of human-powered life heroes, where we'll update you on new shows, events, product launches, and so much more. Now, it's time to enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Powered Life Podcast. Today we're going to have a little twist on things. It's not about necessarily human power. We're going to be talking about animal powered life. We got Daniel Schulof here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. It's good to be here. I'm happy to twist your usual content and tell your folks about some stuff that maybe it's a little outside what they're used to hearing from you.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. You know, I've been a pet lover my whole life. I've grown up with dogs. My wife and I, we've had 2 dogs, since we've been together. And, we have gone kind of off the rails compared to, we'll say, like normal people buying the junk food for the dogs, if you will call it that. We've really done tons of research and really doing our best to make sure our dog lives a long, healthy life. And then all of a sudden you stumble across my email. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, how does this fits perfectly into our realm, with your product, if you will, the KetoNatural dog food, the pet foods. So can you give us a little bit of your background? Because ultimately, you didn't start off as a pet food maker. You did something before, which I don't even know yet, but what led you to this?
So anyway, thanks again for having me on. I'm notable in the doggy world for a couple of things. One is I wrote a book that's called Dogs, Dog Food, and Dogma, which was published in 2016, and which is generally about this weird space between industry and academia and clinical veterinary practice and research science, and how they all come together and create perceived reality and the scientific sausage, and how it all gets transmitted out to pet owners and veterinarians alike, and kind of what's real and what's not, and that whole bizarre system. And I'm the founder of a company that's called KetoNatural Pet Foods, and we make very low carbohydrate kibble style dog food, which is very rare. One of the things I explain in my book is that, like, a lot of folks, even those, I imagine some of your listeners are very keto focused, keto believers. Plenty of folks are not. Even lots of folks that are not, often in my experience, will say, well, of course, the dog's not supposed to eat much carbohydrate. Kind of folks get that intuitively, even if they're not very familiar with the science. And lots of pet food companies try to lean into that by basically making the product appear as if it's very low in carbohydrate content, but the reality is that there's very few. We're one of them. But to answer your question, no, I have not always been in the doggy industry. I went to law school and practiced intellectual property litigation in the city of Atlanta for 6 years before I started my first doggy business. And that kind of the reason I made the shift is, I guess the factors that are relevant are, number one, I was raised with dogs. My mother bred golden retrievers, and I like dogs from childhood, but I got my own, my dog for the first time when I was a single guy living in Atlanta and working too much. And I just got way into him and I fell in love with him. He became very important to me. And he was a Rottweiler. He's passed on now. He was a Rottweiler, big, serious, quintessential Rottweiler. And what that means, if any of your listeners are Rottweiler people, it's like he needed daily intellectual stimulation and exercise if he was going to be a polite member of society. Like, he was definitely had tendencies. And so I was working very hard at that point. I was working as a lawyer in this big firm. And so I had to exercise him really efficiently, basically. And I just got into trying to understand the science, such as it was, that existed around that issue. How do you exercise a dog effectively? What's the best way to do it? What's the most efficient way to do it? What kind, there's so much sports science about how human beings can train their bodies to do different things. So I kind of just went looking for the same stuff in the doggy world. And this, I basically stumbled across these crazy facts about the problem of obesity among pets in the Western world. And they just kind of blew me away and made me very interested in the subject. And I just kind of was like, there's more to this story than is getting reported here. Like, this can't possibly be the explanation. And I just went further and further down the rabbit hole. And yeah, eventually I left my job over it to work on that full time, and basically spent 4 years working on a book.
That's wild. That's, seeing that I live in the natural health world, and keto and veganism and carnivore and all these different things that kind of get thrown into the mix. Like you said before, most people don't think animals are out foraging in the grass like a cow. I mean, dogs are, right? Dogs are not doing this. And it's interesting that, we're so easy to give our dogs in this country kibble that is, if you look at the ingredients, you can't pronounce half this stuff. You don't even know what half it is. And the first thing is grain meal, this, that, the weird stuff that is thrown in the mix. And I remember when we were going through this journey with my wife, we were looking for with our first dog, and we're like, what do we get? There's so much out there.
So hard to, I mean,
you got the $10 bag and you got the $150 bag. What's the difference? And I'll
tell you what, here's a black letter rule you can take to the bank. The nutritional composition of those two products is much more similar than it is different. Sorry, I got my puppy barking. I have two St. Bernards. I have an adult male St. Bernard that's a monster that's just chilling. And I have a 4-month-old puppy that's a maniac that's starting to bark right now. So I apologize.
That's all right. That's all good.
$100, $10. The vast majority of that is perception. What's on the packaging and where it's positioned, as opposed to the nutritional content.
Oh, interesting.
The content of those two products is going to be really similar in the vast majority of cases.
Yeah. So you mentioned obesity with dogs. I mean, I'm a chiropractor in New York City. I see dogs walking around all the time in this city, and I would beg to say that more than half of them have big round bellies. So
here we go. This is when I say the facts about obesity kind of blew my mind. There's two, and scientifically validated. Number one is, you're exactly right. More than half of the dogs and cats in the United States today are either overweight or clinically obese. Okay. So like you said, the next dog, I've not met your dog, and I don't suspect that it is, but
he's not obese,
the numbers, if you pulled your dog onto this camera, the numbers say it's more likely that your dog is overweight than not.
Wow.
So it's the default. It's more than half.
Yeah.
Second mind-blowing fact that just sitting juxtaposed against that makes no sense. It's been established through lifelong studies, basically, where they just look, they start monitoring these dogs as puppies and then follow them all the way up until the time they die, that being moderately overweight, so not massive obese, the kind of thing where some people would be like, that dog's overweight, and other people would be like, no, I think that's a healthy weight. It's moderately overweight is worse for a dog than an entire lifetime of smoking is for a human being. It will shorten that dog's lifespan on average by more than a lifetime of smoking will shorten your lifespan on average. So it's a colossal problem.
Yeah, no kidding.
Half the dogs in the country, and it's just makes no sense.
I mean, it's almost like a mirror of what we are doing to ourselves as humans, right? Literally, and I don't know that I couldn't give you the stats, but I would say more than 50% of Americans alone are overweight or obese.
Oh man,
and it may be even more than that. It may be a huge number.
But here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing is that, it does mirror us. But the thing is we're all at least partially being told that the reason that it's difficult for us to maintain optimal body composition, stop not getting fat, is that temptation, it's hard to lose weight. You have to deny yourself from eating some delicious seeming foods, and you have to exercise, and you have to do things that are laborious. A dog, feeding your dog, it is completely within the owner's control. You do not have to exert any material amount of willpower, any of that. You'd think that it's worse than a lifetime of smoking, and that fact is plastered all over every veterinary office. You'd think it would be the easiest thing in the world to stamp out. And half the dogs.
And what is like, so I know you work with vets and you've learned a lot over the years of researching and learning. Like if you brought an obese dog to a vet, like what are they going to say? Are they going to say, oh, your dog's obese, maybe feed them a little? Like, what do they say?
Yeah, basically calories in, calories out, exercise more, feed less, or feed one of the, there's a phenomenon in the world of clinical veterinary practice in the United States today, where a cluster, essentially two big companies, have a kind of information pipeline that runs through the veterinary offices, where they've made it their business to pitch hard to veterinarians directly under the theory that the veterinarians are going to be explaining things to pet owners.
Like lobbying, like pharmaceutical companies, same thing.
Yeah, sort of, but it's like it exists at like the educational level.
Okay.
It's like not even at the government level. It's like you go to veterinary school and you take clinical nutrition and you will be taught by somebody who is a full-time employee of Hill's Pet Nutrition, like equivalent to being taught, nutrition by somebody who works for McDonald's or
exactly.
So anyway, you'll typically hear exercise more, feed less, don't feed treats, and maybe feed one of the weight loss products made by Hills or Purina. Those are the garden. That's typically the thing is it all coalesces under like a single header, which is that pet owners are often said to be loving their pets to death. We just can't, we're all just so weak-willed or lazy or whatever, and we just can't stomach the idea of not giving our dogs, cake or whatever. And
do we think that people are really feeding their dogs that much junk, or we just think we're overfeeding them garbage food? Is it both?
Who's we? I mean, to me,
no, not you or I will say, but I mean the majority, like like these dogs that I see in the city that are on the Upper West Side. Did we know? I know for the most part, money's not the option on buying food for them.
Absolutely not. Yep.
So what, like, are they just feeding them junk, or they're just like their food, they're giving them too much and too much garbage?
Well,
or maybe not even.
A few things. One is I got a couple theses that I put forth in the book, but the main scientific, kind of substantively scientific one is dietary carbohydrate is essentially the devil for dogs and cats. And one of the reasons why it's the devil is that it has been shown in study after study after study and has never been contradicted to be far more fattening calorie for calorie for dogs than any other kind of calorie of any other macronutrient. So unlike with people where isocaloric studies are kind of hard to do, it's hard to get a person to live in a metabolic ward or to track their diet exactly perfectly. With dogs, often the studies are done when they live in kennels and it's super easy. And so you get just like two groups of dogs, they're in kennels, you know exactly the number of calories you're giving them, you know exactly how much activity they're doing. And so isocaloric studies where you give one group 1,000 calories, high protein, low carb, the other 1,000 calories, high carb, low protein, and then look at what happens is super easy to do. And it's been done at least a half dozen times. Every single time that it has been done, the same finding emerges. That finding is that carbohydrate makes the dogs get way fatter. Same exact number of calories, same exact lifestyle. Only thing that changes is more carbohydrate and less protein, and the animals wind up considerably fatter. So for me, the second thing that's relevant to that is carbohydrate is the backbone of the modern pet food industry. For all the when you and I, if you just go approach the next person on the West Side that you see walking their dog and you just go give me a rundown of what makes a dog food healthy or not healthy, you probably won't hear them say much about carbohydrate. They're going to maybe talk about specific ingredients and talk about the premiumness of it, the good stuff, and kind of refer to the reputation of the company, or even maybe the style of food. Oh, mine's raw or fresh or whatever. You kind of don't hear enough, in my view, about nutritional breakdown. And in reality, the dirty little secret of the pet food industry is that the vast majority of products are 40% carbohydrate or more. There's no, in the world of, you and I can very easily determine if we're eating too many carbs or not, because any packaged food product has the FDA's nutrition facts panel on it, right? And it's got a carbohydrate line. The equivalent of that in the doggy world does not include a carbohydrate disclosure. You do not have to tell the consumer how much carbohydrate is in the product. So if you have a wolf on your beautiful glossy bag, a wolf and a steak and an X across the ear of corn and ancestral evolutionary perfection, it might be 60% carbohydrate. It likely is 50% carbohydrate. And
That's nuts.
It's nuts, but it helps. I think that is a much more coherent explanation for why half the dogs in the country are overweight or obese than it's just like, oh, pet owners are too dumb and we're too lazy and we're too weak-willed. Like, that just doesn't add up to me.
So. Yeah. So then let's think this. So solution wise for people, or I shouldn't say solution, before we get to the solution, we think obesity, people are like, oh, my cat's cute, looks like Garfield, or my dog's fatty, waddles around, it's cute, like people maybe not care, but long term, I guess, going to a veterinary office when you have to take care of cancer or heart disease or whatever, like humans, all of those same diseases are probably just going to translate into our four-legged counterparts, and that's expensive.
It does become expensive. I mean, I'm a little like, I always push back a little bit about the against arguments pertaining to expense side of health problems, because it's like, well, do a good job and your dog's going to live like,
well, I mean, crisis, we'll say crisis
longer. Huh?
There's difference, I guess, between health investment and a health care.
That's right.
Crisis.
That's right.
Or health crisis, right?
Yep.
So and that's really what I mean.
Insurance doesn't exist to nearly the same. I'm sure all your listeners who have pets have been familiar enough with the, like, unlike when you go to get healthcare for yourself, when you go to get healthcare for your pet, you're faced with is this worth it? Do I have enough money to do, I've experienced that. Okay, this treatment's gonna be $4,000 and you might get a couple extra months. That's not a fun conversation to have.
No, not at all. So obviously let's talk a little bit about like your company, the product, like what makes it unique, what makes it usual. Like, and I was looking at a lot of the reviews that people were leaving and they're really cool, on the website. So just give a little breakdown. Like, why would it be like the sales pitch, if you will, like, why would it be important to have this for your pet?
If you are somebody who believes, like I do, that carbohydrate is the devil, that there's essentially, other than not poisoning your dog and not giving it something that's going to develop a deficiency disease, malnutrition or something, other than that, maintaining a super lean body composition is essentially the most important nutritional issue, the most impactful nutritional issue that you can have. And the fact that carbohydrate is the devil in that regard. It's the most fattening macronutrient and will make your dog fat. If you believe those things, you're in kind of a tough spot until our company came along. That's because you had kind of two bad options that what you might want to feed your dog. One is you could feed it the lowest carbohydrate kibble you could find. You could learn about the fact that carbs aren't disclosed and that all the imagery kind of means nothing. And you can figure out how to do the math and back into how much carbohydrate is in all the individual products. And then you can go out there and find the lowest carb kibble that you can find. And what you would typically find is about 30%. 30% of the calories come from carbohydrate, which is relatively is good, but is not is still 29% more calories than a wolf would ever eat. Mm-hmm. The other option is also bad. If you want to feed a truly low carbohydrate or zero carbohydrate diet, you could feed a raw or fresh product. The way that kibble is made, it's kind of like baking bread. Basically, it's like baking meaty bread. You like mix a bunch of ingredients together and then heat them up, and they form into these little nuggets, like little biscuits or whatever. And the reason that bread or kibble holds together like that is because it has starch. That's like what the starch does in it. It melts, it breaks down, gelatinizes, and holds all the ingredients together. So like if you have keto or whatever, people that are listening and you ever tried to make like keto bread, like make bread without starch, it's hard. It wants to fall apart. You have to find like kind of creative ways to get it to hold together. So kibble has always like just leaned heavily on using carbohydrate. Raw diet, you don't have to do that. You don't have to get it to hold together. You're just serving up chunks of meat or whatever. So you don't necessarily have to have carbohydrate in there. The bad thing though, is that calorie for calorie, they're like 5 to 8 times as expensive as the most fancy kibble you can get. Like for all its bad qualities, kibble is incredibly inexpensive. And so people are very attuned to the notion of, price relative to kibble. And so like, if you have, your dog's pretty big, there are plenty of folks, the Upper West Side people we were talking about, very small dogs, apartment dogs, might be the difference. Switching from a fancy kibble to a raw diet might be the difference between 50 cents a day and $4 a day. And it's like, for that person, that's not that big. That's a reasonable switch. If you hate carbohydrate, maybe that's a good fit for you. I have two St. Bernards, one's 150 pounds. And the other is 80 pounds, like gaining a pound a day right now. And it's probably gonna be 200 pounds. So for me, the difference might be between, $15 a day and $120. Like, it's just like a non-starter.
Hey, we're giving you a short break here where you can head down to the show notes or lifestylelocker.com and join our tribe of human-powered life heroes. You'll be the first to know about new shows, events, product launches, affiliate specials, and more. And now, back to the show.
The quantity, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's not a great fit. And so we basically were like, oh man, if we could find something that's like gets the best of both worlds, it's like kibble style product, but with really truly low carbohydrate content, we'd have something. And so we spent a year working with the smartest people we could find to come up with it. And that's what we made. We make a kibble product called Ketona, and it's about 5% dietary carbohydrates. So it's like 75, 80% less than the previously lowest you could find anywhere. It's like basically 50% protein, which is far higher than essentially everything else in the market. And it's in kibble form, and it's competitively priced with the other fanciest kibbles. It's like there's more meat in it and less, cereal grains. So it is more expensive to produce. It's not cheap kibble, but it's far less. It's like a quarter of like a raw diet and delivers comparable or better nutrition in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I think of carbs, as a human being, like refined grain or which is probably the most evil thing, especially if it's all genetically modified and all this garbage. So is that the same stuff that gets thrown in the dog food, or are they using, what kind of carbs get thrown in?
So it's either cereal grains, or derivatives of cereal grains, or tubers, or legumes. There's like legume-based starch as well, pea starches and stuff like that. But one of those three. Some brands lean on the idea that carbohydrate is fine for your dog, and they just try to basically present a very wholesome feeling carbohydrate. It's whole sweet potato, it'll say on the ingredient list or something like that. And others, if they're trying to it depends what kind of product you're trying to put out there. There's plenty that are just using corn derivatives that are just like things I have no idea even how to explain.
No, fair enough. So with Ketona, with feeding the dog, what kind of starches are because you've chunked it down to like such a small percentage, what are the healthier starches that are being used, in there?
Yeah, what we use is pea, like a pea-based starch. Basically, it's green peas, and there's some protein in peas, but the vast majority of their makeup is water and starch and fiber. And so that was like, I am reasonably agnostic philosophically in terms of like what kind of carbohydrate should a dog. I'm more concerned with the overall quantity, digestible carbohydrate as opposed to fiber. I am sensitive to the idea of high glycemic, quickly digested versus low. But I'd be lying if I said like we chose peas because they're absolutely the slowest digesting starchy carbohydrate we could come up with. It was more like, this at least is a green vegetable that we know has micronutritional content than an empty vessel for calories.
Yeah, true. Good. And I was just curious because, like I said, when I looked at, when we started looking at these dog food packages, you're just like, holy crap, there is so much weird stuff in it. I mean, granted,
just trying to everybody loves their pet. Everybody's willing to do some work to try to understand what's best for them. And everybody's connected to the internet. And so everyone is trying, and there's just so much, and it is such a poorly regulated industry that I just all I feel is sympathy for pet owners. Cause just you don't know who to treat. Why would somebody trust me over the next 20 people that come on with completely different? It's just a nightmare, basically. It's just poorly regulated. Yeah. And you literally, the best solution I always come up with is you just have to develop scientific literacy for yourself. Just being I'm going to pick my horses and ride with the people I trust. Good luck. Because there are plenty of folks that, have a credential or that can be persuasive for whatever other reason. And I can tell you, because I've seen it firsthand, that they oftentimes are either actively misleading folks, pet owners, or they're just way overstating what they think they understand about an issue. And in reality, they don't understand it very well. So it's learn the science, and that's the bad, but best answer. Right?
Yeah. No, it's the truth. I mean, it translates right into, us as humans,
Yeah, yeah, I
so
know.
in your journey, like, so this is, I want to kind of shift the conversation for a second. So in your journey with, creating Ketona, like learning all of this stuff as you're writing your book, learning about all of the stuff that lets animals or pets tick in a healthier way, like how was that translated to what you do with yourself?
Oh, well, so I worked on the book from 2012 to 2016. And prior, I would say, to beginning writing it, I think I had read Gary Taub's Good Calories, Bad Calories, and it was impactful for
Mhm.
me. This big, fat book about the history of nutritional science in that specific domain. And I would say that it had impressed upon me the belief that hobbies and activities aside, a very low carbohydrate diet and a high protein diet would be best for my health in terms of long-term chronic disease risk. I bought into that belief with reasonable confidence. However, I do have hobbies, and they do involve their physical activity hobbies that are long-term endurance things, basically. And I am not somebody that believes that I can get the most out of my performance in those things by adhering to a very low carbohydrate diet and avoiding carbohydrate. And so for me, I believe one thing about what's best for chronic disease risk. I don't execute even, I mean, like, and I make it sound like I'm just like, I'm not a great eater. Like, I'm just like, I'm very physically active, and I end up eating a lot of stuff that's, I know is not ideal, but I just kind of run through it. And so yeah, that's my belief about what's healthy
Yeah.
for people as well.
But you've chose, like, they're like why you were working and reading, going through making the book and writing the book, like keto diet. Like, what do you notice, like when you would get into into ketosis, if you measured it, what were like the cool things that you would notice? Because we can't ask our pets.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the feeling, a few things like experientially. One is that like dropping the glycogen water weight feeling of like drying out and feeling like yourself, because I do believe that there's defensible, good quality, persuasive science that says eliminating carbohydrate to help you stay lean. However, I also believe that part of the reason that keto diets are popular within people is that feeling of going from being like heavily watered with a lot of glycogen in your muscles to one where you dump all that over the first like week of just carbohydrate. If you go zero carbohydrate and you just dump that stuff and you lose 10 pounds of water weight and you feel that leanness. That's, I think, part of the reason that they've become a thing, because people are like, oh my God, I lost 10 pounds this week. And you feel it. That's one thing. The other thing that I always very much can identify with experientially is that, like, if I am going through a period where I'm eating a very low carbohydrate diet, doing a good job minimizing carbs, I wake up in the morning and I don't feel for a period of hours any kind of like hunger. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't feel that grumbly stomach type of hunger feeling that if I'm eating like a moderate carbohydrate diet, I feel it within an hour of waking up. My stomach begins to get active and is like, I need to eat. You just like don't get that when I'm eating low carbohydrate. And then, I mean, there are certain, from being a runner as well, there are certain paces that I can't hold without continuing to take in carbohydrate. It's just like there's metabolic systems that don't function without glucose. And if I don't have enough of it in there, I can't make it go the way I want. So that's something I noticed.
Did you notice anything with like Headspace? Like if you went like did like a real zero carb, do you notice like focus? Do you notice any kind of
I
mental shift?
mean, I don't
Not for
know.
the run, but
No,
just
nothing that I clung to, but like in my world, there's so much like, there are just so many other very impactful factors that change that in my life on a daily basis that, like, even if it was a totally like present effect, I probably wouldn't have noticed. You know what I mean? Just like quitting a job, working on a book that I got no idea if it's going to work, a company I don't know if it's going to work, and just being an idiot. Like, there's just plenty of sleep, all that stuff that changes everything. I don't know.
True, but it's neat. Like when I think I hear like stories like that, with like just like your energy and learning this stuff, and I translate it to our dogs, like with training a dog, and
That's a
we
good
just
point.
we're thinking about the metabolic, like keeping them lean and healthy that way. But that also, they have a brain as well, right? So it totally
Absolutely.
neurologically translates. And I can tell you
Absolutely.
just my personal experience, like I've been in and out of ketosis. I'm not a keto. I don't live in ketosis. We'll say that. Like straightforward, people know how I eat for the most part. From me talking on my show, but like I've done like strict keto, like, and just with my wife, we've done it for like weeks, couple weeks, 2-3 weeks at a time. And I can tell you, like, my focus goes like I'm like that chipmunk that wants to go everywhere. I go like, I just like laser focus, and I'm able to like task things out really well, fast, get things done. And I would beg to differ that, like, that's our pets that are eating this way. They're going to probably train better, right? They're probably, they're going to be healthier. They're going to have less vet bills from not from emergencies, but from like, stuff that obesity causes.
Yeah. I mean, that's unquestionably the case.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you save a ton of money in the long run, but what about like the happiness factor between you and your dog, right? Like with training, you got to have a dog that's trained well. It makes your life so much easier. Like, we're not perfect with our dog yet. We're doing a lot of training, but like, I know when he's really good, like my wife very specifically is much calmer. Like, I mean, just because like he'll do something that's maybe not great in the house or something, not like going to the bathroom in the house, but it gets her so anxious. I'm like, okay, so we need him trained, obviously eating well, all this stuff. So like that, it translates back to the human and vice versa.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, my dogs can shape my mental health in positive and negative ways, but in very material ways. My partner, she's a dog trainer, in fact.
Okay.
We've had a couple of different dogs through, and it can just be like some of them are tough. Like, she works in a place where she's kind of like a trainer of last resort for these dogs that are coming out of rescues that like are unadoptable. And sometimes those dogs will come stay in our house, and it is a very anxiety inducing thing. And so, I'm familiar with like the positive and negative of that.
Yeah.
And on the subject of like whether it is unquestionably the case that putting a dog on a very low carbohydrate diet will change brain chemistry. Like, that is 100% well established. Folks with dogs who are prone to seizures, that is a mainstream dogma position that veterinarians hold, is like, put your dog on a keto diet because it'll reduce seizure frequency. And so you see that it's like unquestionably the case that happens with dogs, whether that manifests in experiential differences for the animal, behavioral differences. That stuff's hard to measure, you know what I mean, with dogs, like what's going on in there. But it wouldn't surprise me to learn that.
Yeah. I mean, I think just, getting them to eat well, move more. I mean, you're ultimately changing, like what you're doing ultimately is changing the pattern of the human to create a lifestyle choice for the dog versus waiting for the crisis to occur.
That's right.
And I see that every day with humans, right? Like, it's just, we do the same exact thing to ourselves. We wait till we're broken till we do something. And that is the absolute worst way to take care of your health.
It's something we think a lot about as a business, because a lot of folks, there are a number of diseases beyond just epilepsy that have low carb diets, keto diets for dogs are part of either the mainstream clinical course of care, or there is if you poke around the right research holes, you'll find people telling you that this is something you should do. And sometimes these are deadly, it's like cancer. Like, there's definitely a group.
There's a link with humans as well. I mean, like, it's like, we don't need to be blindfolded with this stuff. Like, we're just trained to wait for the, hide it. Yeah. Okay. The dog needs a tumor that's like 3 inches out of their body, cut out. Like, you could have probably avoided that.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I know, but it's just the nature of the beast that it's like, it's hard to, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Another thing that that seems to dovetail with that is, you were talking before about lifestyle and how to improve the dog's lifestyle with diet and his diet impact. And one way in which it clearly does is, if your dog is anything like every single dog I've ever had, physical activity and movement is something that brings it joy. Going for a walk, playing fetch, running in the dog park, whatever it is, clearly brings these guys happiness. And if your dog gets overweight, your dog is less able to do that kind of stuff, because overweight and osteoarthritis are obviously closely correlated. And you see it all the time, where it's just like, dogs can no longer do these things that they really like to do. You keep your dog lean, and you might be fortunate enough, St. Bernards typically don't live very long life. My dog is 10 years old, and he's kind of a maniac still. He's out there doing his thing. And so, Yeah, that's something you're going to deny your dog the opportunity to do if you wind up obese. It's just not happening.
Yeah. You're increasing longevity, which is huge.
Yeah, that's a pretty important thing too.
Yeah, huge. You know, I mean, most dog owners, unless it's a first, have lost a dog, and that ain't fun.
Yeah, that's the emotional core of my book. Is like it's not just like ain't fun. It's like it's a full on like underappreciated tragedy. I think it's like I don't have kids, but like I don't believe that you would bond with your pet if you didn't have like a hardwired instinct to bond with your kid. Like I think it's basically a repurposing of that instinct, right? Yeah. And it's like you're bonding with it through that. And it's like, obviously, I hope I'm not upsetting anybody. It's like, but like losing a child, a real child, is like the biggest, the worst thing that can be imparted on a person. And yet that's expected to happen in every single pet relationship because they live such shorter lives. And it's like, that's a big deal. It's a huge, I mean, I've experienced it, and it's as bad a thing that's ever happened in my life. Yeah. Like it's a huge deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's heart-wrenching to say the least, So let's pivot here for a second, because I want to, and on a happier note, right? Like, get me thinking, right? About my fast dog Cody here. So let's just do this, because I want to pivot. We're going to go to the next section in a minute. Where are the best places for people to find you, to connect with you, with your company, where to get the book? Like, share some of those.
Yeah, you can get the book through most of the major book retailers. We'll even like there, if you get, so the website for our company is KetoNaturalPetFoods.com. And if you can buy the product through major online retail, Amazon or whatever as well. But if you come to the website, we've got a big library of info. Like we try to do our best to educate folks. And we've got a bunch of studies and research white papers that summarize the studies and videos and stuff like that, all available for free on the site. And you can even get a like e-copy of my book. I'm not mailing physical copies out for free, but I'll send you an e-copy for free if you're down with that kind of thing. Which is not, it's a $17 book. It's a 400-page book. It's a real deal. So I would say just come directly to the website. You can learn about the products, learn about why we do what we do. That's probably the best place. I get interviewed on a lot of podcasts, but I do a really poor job of having my own personal platform. It's all kind of baked.
Well, I'm glad to have you on, and we're definitely going to be pointing people your way for sure. I'm the lifestyle guy, so I love my dog as my child, if you will. So yeah, we're bonded that way. And so everybody, just hang on for a minute. Head over to the show notes and click the link and get to the video. We're going to be talking about some more fun stuff in a few minutes. See you there. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Human Powered Life podcast. Make sure to head over to lifestylelocker.com to check out all the details on the show and to watch part 2 of this episode, which is only in video format. We also have this audio portion in video format if you want. Once again, I'm your host, Dr. Josh Hant, for the Human Powered Life podcast, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with you as a Human Powered Life hero. Remember to join the tribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.